Okay, great. Um, Hello, everyone. We have with us Dr. Robert Kozma with over 40 years of expertise in technology, education, and social development. He has a book published by Wiley called Make the World a Better Place, Design with Passion, Purpose, and Values. And this book serves as a practical guide for global change makers, educators, and designers. And of course, you're the change makers. Students, you are the change makers that is going to make the change. So this book addresses to you guys. As an emeritus principal scientist at SRI International, he collaborated with many ministries of educations, multinational organizations, and high-tech firms, focusing and leveraging information and communication technology for educational and socio-economic transformation. He collaborated with many companies like Intel, Microsoft, UNESCO, OECD, the World Bank, many governments like the government of Singapore, Norway, Chile, Jordan, Egypt, among many others. So please let us give a round of applause to Dr. Kozma, and he's going to share with us this talk about ethics and design. Dr. Kozma, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate this. I've been looking forward to this. I appreciate talking to young students, and I consider all of you young because I'm 77, so pretty much everybody is younger than I am. But I'm particularly excited about talking with students because I think, as you pointed out, the future is really in their hands. I think there are many ways that we've screwed it up for you and left you with somewhat of a mess, but there are also some very exciting possibilities. And I think that you have a lot more to work with than certainly I did when I first started. There's an amazing set of resources that you have at your disposal, a variety of technologies, including, of course, artificial intelligence. Um, and um, and it's with all of that in mind that I accepted Michael's request to talk about uh, design and ethics. Um, I, uh, I consider myself a designer, and we'll talk about who is a designer and what design is in a bit. But going way back early in my career as a teacher, a primary school teacher, where I was designing lesson plans and presentations, and all the way to my work as a research scientist, where I was designing software and designing research studies. So let me start. Can we pull up the presentation, Michael? Let me start with this, and let me mention what I hope is that we can have some discussion here. I know that these kind of remote learning situations are not nearly as conducive to discussion as being face to face. But my hope is that you will be able to respond to a series of questions that I'm going to ask you, and that we have an interesting discussion here, not just a presentation. So actually, my presentation, if you will, is a series of questions that I'd like you to respond to, and see if we can get some interesting discussions going. Um, uh, the first has to do with ethics, of course. And when we think about ethics, we often think about this, what you must not do as a professional? Or alternatively, what you must do as a professional. And so these are questions that I think you'll be addressing for the rest of your career. And often these are questions that are addressed by professional organizations that have a code of ethics, like EEEC or the National Society for Professional Engineers that has a engineer's creed, and the pledge is to give the utmost of performance, to participate in none but honest enterprise, to live and work according to the highest standards of professional conduct, to place service before profit, the honor and standing of my profession before personal advantage, and the public welfare above all other considerations. So these are statements of what you must do or you must not do. But that's not really what I want to focus on today. Those things, of course, are very important, and as I mentioned, you'll be addressing those throughout your career, but this is the one that I'd really like to focus on most. What you should do. And this is a very, very open-ended question. There are no specifications for what you should do with your career. By some estimates, you'll have 80,000 hours during your career in which you'll be able to be an engineer or a computer software engineer. And that's an open field for you. And the question that I'm asking you today is, what should you do with all that time? What are the possibilities, and what are the things that you can accomplish during your career? And what should guide you in that decision, in those decisions? These are very much ethical decisions, just as what you must do or must not do. What you should do is also an ethical decision. And this gets me to purpose, because in order to address the question of what should you do, you need to answer questions about your purpose. So, for example, why did you decide to get into engineering or computer science? And with that, I'd like to get some people who could volunteer. What are your motivations? What was your purpose for getting into this field of engineering or computer science or whatever field you've chosen? Could I have a volunteer or two who can tell us about that? Any show of hands here? Michael, can you select some people to...
Muhammad Fuad, can you tell us why? Okay, Sharbil Mkarzel is saying on the chat, curiosity about the evolving technologies. He's curious about the evolving technologies. This is why he chose his mate. Okay, Muhammad Fuad, can you go ahead and open your mic?
Good evening, sir.
Hello.
First of all, welcome to our class, and it is a big pleasure for us to meet you and hear about yourself.
Thank you very much.
And second, for the question, First of all, engineering is something not easy to do, and when anybody decides to go engineering, you have to be consistent about his goal. I decided to go to engineering because, first of all, it's my dad's work that he works in companies that make machines. So I'm curious to know about machines and how to program them, and how they work.
Okay, great. That's a very fascinating uh, uh, goal for an engineer. Much of what engineering is, going way back to the origin of the profession, is working with machines, going back to the industrial revolution.
Yes.
That and then, do you have some notion in mind of what kinds of machines you might be interested in working with?
Our job is mainly in ice cream machines. So we make rotary machines and machines that fill the ice cream in cones.
Uh-huh.
Yes,
Great.
and we have direct contact with outside companies that give us full catalogs about machines, and I always have curiosity to know about them. And I
Super.
try to learn how to make these things.
Super.
Mhm.
Anybody else?
Kareem Shirri, can you tell us why did you choose to go into engineering? Open your microphone, Hiyam. Hiyam is saying since in our days everything relies on technology, so we have many job opportunities.
Sure. Well, job opportunities are very important, and there are many of them for engineers and computer scientists. Um, I'd also be interested in knowing, why did you decide to take a course on ethics? What connections do you see between ethics and engineering or computer science? Why is it important to you to take this course? Any volunteers on that one?
Hello, doctor. Can you hear me?
Hi, how are you? Yes, I can.
So, in everything that we take in our life, everything has an ethics, not only in engineering. So, even in medical things, or we have the main thing in our life is to have an ethics as a person. So, to know our limits. In knowing this technology, it may lead us to many bad things. So we have to know the limits to like stop ourselves or stop anyone, or to yani give our these ethics to many people, to not to use it as a bad way.
Yes, I think that's very important. That we there's so many things that you read in the paper about people who are engaging in fraud, or who are making addictive products, or products that don't work. And it's important to have in mind what is good to do, what you must not do. And those are important questions when it comes to purpose. Um, I'd like to propose one other purpose that's at least been driving my work throughout life, which is to make the world a better place. So each time I start a new job or a new project, this is a question that I ask myself: how is this making the world better? And we can have many questions about purpose, like how do I get a job, and what should I do, and what should I not do, and this, to me, for me, has been a driving purpose in my life. When I was a teacher, grade school, public school, primary teacher, when I was a professor, when I was a research scientist and a consultant, um, this was always a guide for me. Is what I am doing making the world better? And sometimes that would be developing software. Sometimes it would be teaching young children or graduate students. Sometimes it would be consulting with ministries of education and other government agencies around the world. But always in my mind was, is what I'm doing making the world better? So I would propose that as a purpose that you might consider in your career. And that's what I'm going to pursue with the rest of this discussion. Taking it now to design. Of course, the title of this presentation is Ethics in Design. I wanted to shift now to design, because design is a word that we throw around often. And yet we may not have a good understanding of what design really is, or for that matter, who is a designer. We might often think of design in a very limited way, that we design buildings or furniture or automobiles or clothes. So we may think of designers as Enzo Ferrari or Karl Lagerfeld or Zaha Hadid or Charles Ames, big name designers. We may think of those people as designers and not think broadly about design, which is what I would really like us to do. I'd like you to think about whether you're a designer or not. And this is the definition that I use from Herb Simon, who was a Nobel laureate. He was a professor at Carnegie Mellon University. He was a professor of computer science and very much involved in the very early work of artificial intelligence. He was a professor of political science, which is actually where he got his Nobel Prize in political economics. He got the Nobel Prize in economics. But he wrote a book in the 1960s, which was seminal in my own studies. I worked with Herb Simon. I studied with him at Carnegie Mellon when I was on sabbatical from the University of Michigan. He was very influential in my thinking. And the book that he wrote was called Science of the Artificial. It was a book about design. And in the book, this is how he talks about design. The designer is concerned with how things ought to be, how they ought to be in order to attain goals and to function. He also says that everyone designs who changes existing situations into preferred ones. Now, in my mind, this is inherently ethical. Particularly if you look at ethics as what it is we should do. If you think of how things ought to be and preferred situations, it's inherently ethical or moral. What are the values that we bring into the oughts or the preferreds? So designers are a lot of people, including software designers and engineers, but teachers, lawyers, doctors, pretty much anyone who is changing existing situations into preferred ones. Another person that I look to for his thoughts on design is a famous designer, Victor Papanek, who talks about design this way. Recognize a wide range of designed products, whether material or non-material, among which we live, objects, graphic systems, even political and legal structures. So he's going beyond products, as Herb Simon would. He includes products, Simon does, but it's really anything that helps us change existing situations into preferred ones, or gets us to where we ought to be. And that is an important direction that I took in the book that I wrote, which is how to make the world a better place, designed with passion, purpose, and values. And it was these definitions of design that drove my thinking in this book. So I'd like you to begin to think about your own career as that of a designer, as that of someone who changes things from what they are to preferred situations, preferred conditions, and to think of all that you do, whether it's working with machines and designing machines, using machines to design products, creating software, graphic systems, even if you are in politics or law or medicine or education, thinking about the designs that you create to make the world a better place, to take it from where we are to where we ought to be. And that's very much a moral or ethical process. In that process, I'd like you to think about what makes a bad design, if we're talking about design and ethics. And I'd like to have some volunteers here. If you can give me an example of a bad design.
Any volunteers?
Any thoughts on this?
Sharbel Mkarzel is saying doesn't meet the user requirement.
Good. Yeah, that's a very good one.
Hiyam is saying that doesn't follow ethical regulations.
Could you give me an example of something that doesn't follow ethical regulations? A concrete, something that you can think of that you've encountered, that you've read about in the newspapers or that you purchased. Something that doesn't meet your requirements or that is unethical.
Hiyam, can you please give the example?
Yes. Hijacking personal information. That is a big one. Yes. And it's an example of a common application in software that really works against the user rather than for the user. It's taking advantage of the user. Anyone else?
Ahmad is saying a design that endangers the consumer.
Very, very good. And there have been many, many of those, sad to say. One of the ones that I use in my book is actually the Boeing 737 MAX, which appeared again in the papers just recently here in the States. It first appeared shortly after they released it with two big accidents. One a flight leaving from Indonesia that crashed into the ocean, killing everyone on board, and one that took off from Cairo on the way to Nairobi that crashed. And these were airplanes that were designed poorly. And it's very well documented. And I go into the document. I use this as a case study. I go into the documentation and show the actual decisions that were made that resulted in a bad design. And bad designs are created by making specific decisions as we go along, developing a product, and they are bad because they don't work. In the case of the Boeing 737, or they harm people, and I think both of these are really good examples. Other examples of bad designs would be those that don't make money. That's often how we evaluate designs that are inefficient, that don't work, as we mentioned, but also designs that cause harm, such as the 737, physical harm in this case, but emotional or psychological harm. There's in the paper, in the newspapers, there's been a lot of reporting about how Facebook has and Instagram have caused psychological, emotional harm for the users. They're very addictive, particularly for teenage girls. There's been a lot of harm reported. And the particularly sad thing about this is that Meta or Facebook knew about this harm. They identified it in their own research, but decided to go ahead with the features of Instagram and Facebook that cause harm because it created more advertising dollars, because it engaged people for longer periods of time, engaged more people, and this is an example of unethical behavior. Social harm is also a way that products can result in unethical behavior. I'd also like us to think about what is good design, and I'd be very interested in getting some examples here. What is good design? Some specific things that you can think about that are good designs.
What do you guys consider as a good design? Sherbil is also saying a widely available product or service. Hussein is saying a design that meets the user needs.
That's a particularly good one. Can you give me an example of a design that meets user needs? Anyone? Can anyone give me an example?
Ahmad is saying a bridge.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Rodolphe is suggesting autopilot.
Uh-huh.
Hussein is saying maybe the design of a mouse for a computer.
Sure.
We
Well,
have
there are
also
many. Yes, go ahead.
suggestions about scalable and prone to improvements, uh, a design that helps the consumer on a daily basis. Muhammad is saying the one which gets the most users. Hiyam is saying safety measurements. Can you
Good.
guys give practical examples?
Yeah.
An elevator,
Mm-hmm.
maybe. Can you name the type of elevators or the type of mobile phones? Gilbert is saying it could be a robot that works in-house and cleans.
Okay.
Sharbil is saying a web server that holds a large number of users and doesn't shut down or be overloaded.
Good. Okay, let's consider some of those designs for a moment. Let's say a design that maximizes the number of users. That, of course, is a goal that many companies have. They develop a product, they want people to use it. But there are embedded ethical questions in that. To what lengths do you go to get people to use your product? There are ethical considerations here. So, for example, one of the companies that has the largest number of users on the planet is Microsoft, or excuse me, is Meta's Facebook, billions of users, and that is good to a certain extent, but is it good from an ethical extent? Well, particularly if you consider the situation where it is harming users, particularly teenage girls. So we have to trade these things off between situations where we have designs that are good because they bring in a number of users, and designs because they bring in that aren't so good or maybe even bad because the way they bring in users is to get them addicted. So cigarettes have a large number of users. Are cigarettes good designs? I would contend no, because they harm people. And the way that they bring in users is to addict them. And that is intentional. I mean, it's well documented that cigarette manufacturers include chemicals that are specifically chosen because they're addictive. So we have to think deeply. If we're going to think about ethics and design, we have to think deeply about some of these criteria that we use to determine whether a design is good or not. There are many people who have addressed this question, of course. One of them is Dieter Rams, who is a famous designer for Braun consumer products. And he's designed many products such as stereos and coffee grinders and furniture. And he has a list of 10 rules that he proposes to judge a design as good. Among them are that it's innovative, that it's useful, as a number of you have pointed out, that it's aesthetic. It has a certain pleasing visual appearance or a look and feel, that it's understandable to a user. The user can easily figure out how it is used, that it's unobtrusive, that it blends in with the way people use their products in their everyday life, that it's honest and doesn't addict people, for example. It's long lasting, doesn't break the first time you use it, or for that matter, it has a long presence in your life. It's thorough down to the last detail. You, as a designer, have considered all of the aspects of the design and address those in your design. It's environmentally friendly. And this last rule is one that Dieter Rams is kind of famous for. It's his less is better rule. As little design as possible. He was very famous for, he's still alive, very famous for sleek designs, and was very influential for the design of the Macintosh computer and the iPhone, that has a very sleek, simple design that's very understandable, useful, aesthetic, innovative. All of these rules were followed when the Macintosh computer was designed and when the iPhone was designed. These rules were very influential in developing those designs. Other designers like Don Norman have rules that help designers kind of create products that are specifically very useful and understandable to the consumer. What I'm going to ask you, though, is what should you design? What is should design? We've talked about what is bad design, what is good design. What is should design? What should we be designing? And that, I hope, is what you take with you out of this session and out of this course, is to think deeply about what you should be designing. What should you be creating as an engineer, as a computer scientist? What should you be doing with your career? And I'd be interested in some thoughts on that. Any volunteers who think about what they should be designing? What? Can you identify a specific problem that you would like to design for? Can you identify a big problem we should be designing for?
Come on, guys. You live in Lebanon. There are many problems that we have. Can you identify one of them?
Yes, environmental pollution is a big one.
Better electrical plants.
Smart electric grids, yeah.
Using blockchain. Wow. Good.
Global warming, address global warming, yes. What would you use a blockchain for? This is what I've often asked myself, is like, why is it that we've invented blockchains. What does that get us? How does that make the world a better place? How is it that we can use blockchains to make the world better? Any thoughts on that? Okay, and in tracking and authenticating data, why is that important? Okay, these are questions I want you to take with you. Okay, so I'm hoping that you understand the importance of this question. What is should design? What should you be designing? Because we do have what is good design, and we do have what is bad design, but in the middle, there's this huge space that you have for the rest of your career in deciding what it is you should design. And that is going to determine who you work for, who your clients are, what projects you take on, what projects you refuse. This is an important question that I think should guide the rest of your career. What should you be designing? Well, it may not surprise you that that's the question that I took on in this book that I wrote on making the world a better place. Because if our purpose in design is to make the world a better place, and if design is changing existing situations to preferred ones, and if design includes all kinds of things, material and non-material, products and services among which we live, then there are so many things that we could be doing, and it would be useful to have guides that help us identify the things that we should be designing. And that's what I provided in this book, is designs to make the world a better place. I provided 7 design principles that I propose. One you may not be surprised by is do no harm. The other is to reduce existing harm. That an important way to make the world a better place is to identify where harm exists, like global warming and pollution and unaffordable housing or homelessness, poverty, these things war, these things that exist causing harm are things that we could address with our designs to reduce the amount of harm among people. An overriding one is to increase happiness and well-being. For the philosophers, going back to Aristotle, but also the philosophers of the Enlightenment, happiness and well-being were the basic goal of all philosophy. How is it that we can have happier lives? And how is it that we can increase well-being? So using that as a guide for your designs, I think, would be an important way to keep your focus throughout your career. Another one that I used as a teacher was advanced knowledge and agency. Promote equality, address injustice, and build compassionate, supportive relationships in communities. In the book, I give a lot of examples and case studies of each of these. How it is that designers are reducing harm, increasing happiness, advancing knowledge, promoting equality, addressing injustice, and building compassionate, supportive relationships in communities. These, I think, are useful guides in helping us design ethically, not just designs that are good designs or bad designs. They're designs that we should be doing as engineers, as computer scientists, as doctors, as lawyers, as teachers, things that help make the world a better place. Okay, I'd like to end with this question because I know it's something that you've been discussing. What are the implications that we've discussed so far for the design of AI? How is it that we think ethically about designs that use artificial intelligence? And I'd like to end with that discussion. Any thoughts on that? How can we design AI that makes the world a better place rather than AI that is harmful or even destroys the human race, as some fear?
We'd like to hear your opinions, guys.
This is going to be important for you. A lot of you are going to be using, maybe all of you are going to be using artificial intelligence in one way or another. How do you use it in an ethical way? I like that one a lot, leaving a watermark. Copyright.
On AI generated content. Copyrights.
I think that's a very, very good point. In so many ways, I'd be interested in how it can help people in a good way. But for a moment, let's talk about copyright and watermarks and so on. I mean, one of the criticisms of these large language models and chatbots is that they scoop up information all over the internet. They have to. That's what they operate on, are the large databases of other people's products. It might be research articles or newspaper articles or various artworks now that we have multimedia artificial intelligence. And the problem is that they can generate things that take advantage of those copyrighted materials without the people who created them benefiting from that. So it could very well be that if we had watermarks that identified where the information came from, that there was some kind of tracking that said, well, this particular piece was based on this article, this work of art, that there could be a scheme, perhaps using blockchains, that distributes the profits that are made by some AI product to the people that were the products that were used to create it. So it benefits not just the person who used the AI to generate a work of art or a written document, but it benefits others as well, other creators. And And another student here pointed out that a concern about eliminating jobs. And there have been some examples of that that show how this could be used in the future in a way that does eliminate jobs and does so in an unethical way. That is, there are advertisements that are coming out now that use Tom Hanks as an image of Tom Hanks endorsing a product that Tom Hanks didn't endorse. And that's unethical because it uses Tom Hanks' image or a replica of Tom Hanks' image without his consent. But it's also unethical because it uses his image in a way that promotes a product that he didn't promote. And if he would promote this, he'd get paid for it. It would be a job for Tom Hanks. And many performers, many actors, and others engaged in developing movies and TV shows are really concerned that these AI tools will put them out of business, put them out of a job. That there may be nothing but AI, even if it's not an image of Tom Hanks or another actor, that there'll be all of these artificial actors that reduce the need for real persons as actors, or may not totally eliminate them, but it would reduce their salary because they would be competing with these artificial actors. So I think the point that was made about displacing jobs is a very important one, that we may be creating an economy that produces wealth, but doesn't produce jobs, or produces very few jobs, or the jobs that are produced are lower paying jobs because people are competing with artificial entities. And we have to think deeply about the impact of how we design with AI with those questions in mind. Because there are going to be companies that want to use AI to eliminate jobs and increase their profits. Are you going to participate in that? Are you going to use design in that way that eliminates jobs, but increases somebody's profits? That's a moral decision. That's an ethical decision that you're going to need to consider as you work with AI in your career. So with that, I'd like to open it to any questions you may have, either for me or other students.
If you'd like to ask any question, please raise your hand and then we'll give you the permission to open the microphone. Hiam, what did you mean by skill loss to AI? Okay, I will read the questions. Asim thinks that as long as we don't have strong AI, there won't be job displacement.
That could be true, but certainly the companies that are engaged in developing AI, OpenAI and Google and others, are competing to make AI more and more capable because it's their commercial advantage. If they have a more capable version of AI, somebody is going to use their service rather than their competitors. So I think the economics is such, if you take away the ethics, the economics is such that it's inevitable that we're going to have very strong AIs that are much better at doing at least certain things and maybe anything than humans. Also, for economic purposes, again, if you take the ethics out of it, the tendency is for any company to reduce its costs because reducing costs with the same product or the same productivity increases profits. So one way to reduce costs is to eliminate jobs. So there's and if AI, which doesn't get paid every day, doesn't call in sick, doesn't require a vacation, if AI can be used to replace jobs, then there's a very strong economic incentive to do that. So from the economic perspective, this is inevitable, that jobs will be, some will be created because we'll need AI designers and so on. But keep in mind that AI is getting better and better at programming. So AI can do its own programs. So we're thinking in a fundamentally different way than we have in the past. Is that AI has capabilities, and more so in the future, capabilities that we've never thought of before, that have never been available before. And at the same time, the economics are such that it pushes it in a direction that's going to have a major impact on society by eliminating jobs. And that is an ethical question that we haven't addressed. And I think it's one that you're going to be faced with throughout your career, one that I haven't had to face in my career. So I think we need to be thinking, is profit the only thing that should be important in running a company? Are there other considerations, other ethical considerations about what we should be doing with AI or not be doing with AI or any other technology that we have at our disposal? So those are the questions I'd like you to leave you with. I know I haven't answered all of them, but I am confident that you will be spending the rest of your career trying to answer them. And I wish you the best of luck and hope you can all engage in making the world a better place.
Thank you, Dr. Robert, for this very insightful presentation, and hopefully the future of our planet, of our species, you guys, the students now, you're going to do design with ethics. You need to take ethics into consideration when you're going to do your work later on, and always try to make the world a better place. Thank you, Dr. Kozma. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.